What's going on, guys? It's Zach here, bringing you guys from a fantasy football video. So I'm going to be going over 7 players that I've been looking to buy low on ahead of Week 8 in the NFL. We're halfway through the regular season for fantasy football at this point, so now we sort of know, in general, how these players are going to perform throughout the course of the season. We've got a lot of players that have either underperformed due to just bad luck so far, potentially their roles are changing going forward, and potentially we've got better matchups going forward as well. And we're at that point in the season where we really want to be positioning ourselves to either have the best lineup possible come fantasy playoffs, or we're in a position where we really need to start stacking wins. So obviously, all of this stuff with trades is going to be very record dependent as well, very situational depending upon where your team's at, sort of which players you can take on. But some of these guys are trade for candidates regardless of record, and some of these guys are guys that you should only be trading if you're in a certain spot. So keep that in mind. As always, if you guys do have any specific trade questions, I love helping you guys out with those in the comments. So just let me know there, shoot your question there, and I'll be happy to get back to you guys. I'll make sure I get back to pretty much every single one. I believe I've responded to every single comment so far this year. So I'll continue doing that. I'll make sure I help you guys out and hopefully get you guys the best rosters possible come fantasy playoffs, and then hopefully get you guys some championships as well. So it's a lot of fun. Trading is one of my favorite things to do in fantasy football. It's one of the best ways to make your teams better throughout the course of the season as well, and it's honestly the way to really help separate yourself over the course of the season. So it's a lot of fun for me. I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. As always, if you find anything helpful here, please do just give it a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm. Share the channel and videos with your friends. It really helps everything. Helps with all the support. And as always, if you haven't subscribed already, I know a lot of you guys watch these videos and maybe you aren't subscribed, maybe you don't know that you're not. Just take a look, give it a subscribe here. Really help with the channel. Maybe help me hit my goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. So yeah, with that, let's just get into the first player I want to go over here. And then, like I said earlier, if you guys have any specific questions, let me know in the comments. So, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I'm going to talk about Chris Olave one more time here as a buy low candidate. And maybe I'm just being stubborn, but he saw a season high 15 targets in week 7. He continues to dominate air yardage, so he's being utilized down the field a ton. And I think that in general, a lot of his just inconsistency so far has been largely due to the play of his quarterback. We know Derek Carr has just obviously not been quite right with that shoulder injury. He's been just super eager to dump it down to Alvin Kamara so far. If you watched the game last Thursday, you saw Derek Carr just really didn't perform at a very high level. They still had a chance to win the game. They really just didn't deserve to. Derek Carr played really poorly the entire game. Got mad at Chris Olave on one route where Olave stopped on a route that Derek Carr threw the ball like 20 yards out of bounds on. So, in general, there's obviously some frustrations going on in New Orleans here. But Chris Olave is an extremely talented player. I mean, a 15 target game is something that you'd obviously expect to result in a lot more than the 7 catches for 57 yards he had last season. He's only scored 1 touchdown as well in the year. That should easily flip. I expect him to score, I don't know, 5 over the course of the season at least. So he's gotten unlucky in that regard as well. On top of that, he just got some bad press. He was arrested due to reckless driving. He was going 70 miles per hour in a 35. Obviously, not a good look. I don't think it's going to be anything significant for his fantasy implications. We just saw Jordan Addison obviously ball out on Monday Night Football just a couple days ago, and he was going like 140 and a 50. So Addison was going way faster and way far more over the speed limit than what Olave was doing. So there shouldn't be any real legal ramifications here for Chris Olave. Just a slap on the wrist. He should be okay there. And really the big excitement here for me with Chris Olave is just how great their schedule is going forward. The next 3 matchups are absolutely fantastic. They get the Colts, who just let PJ Walker and the Browns put up about 40 points. The Bears, who outside of last week have had an absolutely awful defense. And the Vikings, who always find their way into shootouts. The Saints are throwing the ball a ton so far as well. They've got Derek Carr throwing about 50 times a game over the last couple of weeks. There's going to be a ton of volume here to go around for the Saints offense. Chris Olave is an elite wide receiver in elite matchups coming up. He's going to solidify himself as that wide receiver 1 over the next month. I fully expect him to put on just a monster stretch here. And if he doesn't do that, then okay, I'll take my L on Chris Olave and say, okay, maybe he's not that wide receiver 1 that we drafted him to be. But I really do think he's going to be a wide receiver 1 the rest of the season. He'll solidify himself as that right now, and it's not going to cost you that right now. I know he's got the name associated with it, but it's obviously been a little frustrating so far, and I think you can get him at a discount right now. Next up, we've got another player who I've talked about, I think, one other time so far as a buy low candidate. That's going to be Ramondre Stevenson. I know it was a little odd seeing or sort of talking about him as a buy low right now because he's actually sort of improved over the last couple of weeks. They're involving him in the passing game quite a bit. He's got 6 catches in each of the last 2 games, but I think you can still buy low on him because you can sell a Ramondre manager on the fact that Zeke's getting goal line work. We've seen Ezekiel Elliott be involved over the last 2 weeks. Zeke has scored touchdowns in each of the last 2 weeks as well. But the fact of the matter is, Damian Harris was effectively operating in the Ezekiel Elliott role last season, except Damian Harris was more involved than what Zeke is right now. And even in that situation, Ramondre Stevenson was still a running back 1 on the year. Obviously, this Patriots defense is not as just set on throwing Ramondre Stevenson the ball. But the fact of the matter is, their offense really can't be much worse than what it was last season. They've been a little bit better over the last 2 weeks. I think we'll see a lot of that regression to what they were last year, and that makes Ramondre probably like a high-end running back 2, maybe even a low-end running back 1 the rest of the season. And he just really hasn't been that. Obviously, throughout the first like 5 weeks of the season, he was just brutal. And in the last 2 weeks, he still hasn't been fantastic. He's just been useful enough for fantasy. So I think you can convince the Ramondre manager in your league that Zeke is really involved. Zeke's going to continue the goal line work, and that the Patriots offense is just too bad to support 2 running backs. But Ramondre is operating as the lead back, and the snap share is very heavily slanted in his favor. Obviously, the goal line work is a little disappointing, but we've seen them sort of use both running backs on the goal line as well. I don't think it's a situation where Zeke's just the guy they're going to bring in solely on goal line purposes. Ramondre is the guy they're going to use in passing game situations, and we know this is a team that's probably going to lose a lot of games the rest of the season. There'll be a lot of opportunity for garbage time here for Ramondre, and he's definitely somebody that, especially in PPR formats, I definitely want to get on my rosters right now, and I don't think he costs all that much. Next up, we've got one more running back here. It's going to be Bijan Robinson. And just what a brutal situation for Bijan managers in Week 7. We had him sort of go to bed Saturday night saying he had headaches. He woke up Sunday morning feeling even worse. And the Falcons, for whatever reason, didn't report that to the NFL immediately when they found out. They're supposed to, and a player comes up sick or injured, it's their duty to report that to the NFL. And they didn't do that. So we had sort of that guessing game throughout the course of the game is, okay, did he break a team rule? Is he being punished by the coaching staff? Is Arthur Smith just being Arthur Smith and refusing to use his good players? And it really turned out that we saw Bijan Robinson get a single touch in a game where we really would have expected him to be a focal point in the offense. He admitted after the game, however, that he was dealing with those headaches and just really didn't feel like himself. And I think this is going to be a bit of a one-off. Hopefully the headaches subside. I don't think it should be anything to worry about long-term. And he's just an extremely talented running back. We've seen him play. If you watch the Falcons play football, he's about him and Drake Leonard are about the only really exciting things so far about their offense this season. Obviously, the way they play football is not extremely fun. You see a lot of ground and pound, a lot of 2 yards in a cloud of dust. But when Bijan gets the ball, something super exciting can happen every single time. He's been averaging about 18 touches per game going into this last week, and that usage has actually been relatively solid, especially given how slanted it is towards him in the passing game. And he's just a really talented player. He's going to make the most of his touches going forward. He's going to be a running back 1 the rest of the season. He should score a touchdown on the ground here at some point. I know he hasn't done that just yet, but it'll happen. He's just not going to get any cheaper than this. Obviously, the Bijan manager is probably very frustrated. He hasn't been the real difference maker that they drafted him to be. They drafted him to be potentially the running back 1 this season. I know he hasn't been that. Maybe that ceiling is gone because of how dead set the Falcons are on using guys like Algier and even Cordarrelle Patterson here and there. So I think that ceiling is like a top 3 running back is probably gone for him, but he's going to be a top 10 guy for sure, maybe even top 5. And he's a guy that I don't think is going to be any cheaper than he is right now. So I would definitely target him in trades. Next, we've got another running back here, another running back on a struggling team that really just hasn't gotten it going just yet this season, and that's going to be Josh Jacobs. But the fact of the matter with Josh Jacobs is that he just continues to get all of the work in this Raiders backfield. We know he's a talented player. He led the NFL in rushing yardage last season, and he really just should be getting more and more acclimated to live action. I think that we really do have to remember that he didn't have a training camp this offseason. He didn't have a preseason. He sat out most of the training camp and practices there, just waiting for that contract, and we would expect him to sort of get ramped up to speed here. I know we're obviously going into week 8 now, so hopefully you would have hoped that he'd get acclimated a little bit quicker here. We're seeing guys come in off the street like Darrell Henderson, Jonathan Taylor, and they're performing at a high level or high enough level. But really, though, I think Josh Jacobs should get better and better as the season goes on. Jimmy Garoppolo should be returning as early as week 8 from that back injury. That's going to be a huge boost for him, and just the volume's there for him. He's a guy that's getting so much work in this offense and is involved enough in the passing game as well. He's got a really safe floor. The touchdowns haven't really come his way yet, but they're going forward. I know this Raiders offense isn't elite by any means, but they're really not much worse than they were last season. Josh Jacobs is in a contract year. He's obviously going to be a free agent after this season, so he should be plenty motivated to turn his season around, be more productive, and make sure he can get that long-term deal. So the motivation is not an issue here. The offense is obviously a little bit of an issue, but the volume's there for him. He should be a little bit more efficient going forward, and touchdowns are going to come his way as well. So he should be a running back 1 the rest of the season, probably like a top 7 or 8 running back the rest of the way, just based off of his usage, and I don't think it's going to cost you that right now. I know a lot of managers are really frustrated. I got him in a dynasty league for super cheap recently. It's a little bit different than a redraft, but he's a guy that I definitely think you can bank on the rest of the season and someone that's going to be a really high-end performer for you and probably won't cost you as much as he should at this point. Next up here, we've got sort of a bit of a situational one. So this one obviously only applies to people that are in good spots. Maybe you're 4-3 at least with a really good team, or you're 5-2 or better. But if you're in a position where you don't necessarily need to win games right now, I think Justin Jefferson's a really great trade target. Reports recently came out that Justin Jefferson is progressing through his rehab faster than anticipated. They're saying he's feeling a lot better than they thought he would, and that's really promising news. It sounds like there's not really a risk that Justin Jefferson needs to miss more than those 4 games from him being put on IR. The Vikings have gone 2-0 without Justin Jefferson, and that's really promising because now they're 3-4. They're firmly in the playoff hunt, which are really just underwhelming NFC conference, and that means that the Vikings are not going to be a position where they're tanking this season. They're probably not going to trade Danielle Hunter, any talk of Kirk Cousins waiving his no trade clause to go elsewhere. That should get thrown out the window. The Vikings are going to be a team that's competing to make the playoffs. They'll probably end up fighting their way into a wild card spot as well, and that's really good if you're a Justin Jefferson manager. He's going to miss those 2 more games, and they'll come back being the alpha in an offense that's going to need to put up a lot of points because their defense just really isn't all that great. The emergence of Jordan Addison on the other side over the last couple of weeks is extremely promising as well. It's going to take even more pressure off of Justin Jefferson. Obviously, they're going to focus on Justin Jefferson, but this should be a really high-end offense the rest of the season. They're going to be an elite offense going forward, and Jefferson's going to be a huge part of that. So if the Jefferson manager in your league is 2-5, 3-4, maybe 1-6, and just really needs to start stacking wins, I think you can really target them and try and get Justin Jefferson right now. They obviously are in a spot where they need to start winning games, and if they don't move Justin Jefferson to help themselves do that, it's not going to matter when he comes back because they'll be 2-8, and at that point, they're not going to be in a position where him returning can really save them. So Jefferson should definitely be targeted right now, especially if you can eat a couple losses. And there's no guarantee that if you trade for him, you're going to lose the next couple weeks either. But when you get him and when he's back, he's going to take your team to a whole new level, and he should definitely be targeted right now. Next, we got another wide receiver, a slightly less sexy name than Justin Jefferson, but I think Marquise Brown is somebody that we should be targeting in trades right now, and he's actually been really solid so far this season. He's the wide receiver 21 of the year. I know it might not quite feel like it, and a lot of that's because of 2 straight bad games that likely have fantasy managers frustrated. He does, however, have 18 targets over these last 2 games. That's 9 per week, and that's actually really solid. We've just sort of seen Joshua Dobbs regress a little bit, not playing at as high of a level as he was early on in the season, and it's hard to put up high-end numbers when your quarterback struggles as much as Joshua Dobbs has. But the good news here is that Kyler Murray is set to return very soon. He could return as early as this week. They do have a couple of tough matchups and then a bye. I would sort of anticipate him returning in week 11 against the Falcons, but I've heard varying reports we could see him return as early as this week. So that being said, though, Marquise Brown was a top 5 wide receiver last season with Kyler Murray and no DeAndre Hopkins. That is the situation that Marquise Brown will find himself in upon the return of Kyler Murray, and he's probably going to cost you like a wide receiver 3 price tag right now, a guy that, people are okay starting but aren't exactly super excited about. He's a guy that I do think does have legitimate top 15 wide receiver upside the rest of the season. Even going back early into the offseason, I talked about him as one of my favorite players to draft in the middle to late rounds because he was a guy that was being drafted as the wide receiver 30, and I had him coming out just during my projections as the wide receiver 15 on the season. That accounted for about half of a season of Kyler Murray, and it seems like we're sort of getting to a point where it's going to really balance out like that. Really excited about that. I think Marquise Brown's going to absolutely go off once Kyler Murray comes back. Obviously, there'll be a bit of a runway there where Kyler Murray's just not quite himself, but by the time we get to those fantasy playoffs, Marquise Brown and Kyler Murray should be clicking on all cylinders. Marquise Brown should be a guy that's going to be a really high-end contributor for you, and he's not going to cost you all that much at all. And lastly, we'll talk about one quarterback on this list, and that's going to be Justin Herbert. This is a call that hasn't really quite worked out for me just so far this season. I know I talked a lot about him this offseason as a guy that I thought legitimately could finish the season as the quarterback 1 overall, and it just hasn't quite materialized for the Chargers just yet. The path, however, is still there for them. I think there's a lot of opportunity for this to be a Chargers offense that really takes it to the next level going forward. Their playoff schedule is just absolutely fantastic for Chargers pass catchers as well, along with Justin Herbert. They play the Las Vegas Raiders, the Buffalo Bills, and the Denver Broncos. Those are 3 teams that you can throw the ball against at a really high success rate. A couple of offenses that are good enough to keep this team needing to throw the ball a lot. And on top of that, Austin Eckler should only get healthier and boost the offense. Quentin Johnston should get more and more familiar with the offense and help really elevate that team as well. Jalen Guyton, sort of a forgotten name in Los Angeles as well. His 21-day window to come off the IR was activated just last week as well. And he's a guy that's a really high-end deep threat for them, and I know that might not seem like a lot, but without Mike Williams there, they don't really have anybody to take the top off of the defense. Jalen Guyton could actually be a really big thing for them. He could really help elevate that offense, and I really just think there's a lot to be excited about with the Chargers going forward. Obviously not as a franchise. Their defense is absolutely atrocious, but That's actually really good for fantasy because it means that this is going to be a team that needs to put up 25 to 30 points every single week to be competitive, and that's what we want to see. The high-end fantasy contributors are on teams often that are in situations where they need to put up a lot of points in order to be competitive. We don't find ourselves in situations where you'll have these teams putting up all their points in the first half and being able to take their foot off the gas. So Justin Herbert should really excel down the stretch. His numbers are actually pretty good so far. We're just seeing a lot of rushing touchdowns as well. It just hasn't quite worked out from a touchdown standpoint, but I think the touchdowns are going to break his way here soon. They've got a really great schedule going forward, and on top of that, they're through their bye already, so you're sort of missing that bye. That's something that I think a lot of people sort of overlook when they're making trades at this point in the season. If you can trade for players that have already had their bye, you're getting yourself an extra week of production that the player you're trading away isn't going to give you. So keep that in mind as well, but I think Justin Herbert can easily be a top 5 quarterback the rest of the season, maybe him being the number 1 quarterback overall. Probably a little bit unlikely with how well it's guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts are playing so far, but certainly possible for him to be a really high-end contributor. He's someone that I would definitely be targeting right now just because he's sort of struggled the last couple of weeks. So that'll do it for this video. I've gone over 7 players that I'd be looking to buy low on ahead of Week 8. Obviously, if there's any player I didn't talk about that you think should have been on this list, feel free to let me know. I'm happy to give you guys my opinions on any players. Obviously, a lot of this is roster dependent, and I understand there's a lot of nuance and sort of context that's required to make trades. So if you guys have any specific trade questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. I love helping you guys out. Any context you can give me as well is going to help me give you the best advice possible, but I'll make sure I get back to you, give you guys my opinion as much as possible. So really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video. Up next, as released today, we'll be getting out the sell high video as well. I'll go over 5 players I'd be looking to sell high on. So you'll be able to look at both those videos today, Thursday morning, or tomorrow when you guys are watching this. You guys will get the Thursday night primer where I'll preview the game between the Buccaneers and the Buffalo Bills. That should be a relatively fun Thursday night football game. And then Saturday morning, you guys will get my video where I'll go over every single matchup this week and go over which players I'd be looking to buy low, or which players I'd be looking to start and sit in each matchup, sort of help you guys get your lineup set. And then obviously Sunday morning we'll be doing the live stream as well, 1 hour before kickoff. So if you want to make sure you guys get access to all these videos, all you got to do is subscribe to the channel. You can click the notification bell so you get notifications when videos come out. Help me help you the rest of the season. Help me reach my goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year as well. We need about 10 per week the rest of the season. I know a lot of you guys watch these videos and haven't subscribed yet, so if that's you, just take a look. If you haven't subscribed already, I'd really appreciate it. It really helps with the channel and really helps you know that I'm doing a good job. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch these videos, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.